Aloha everybody, my name is Jeanette Stockford, and today I'm going to be talking about propaganda in the arts based on our graphic design history class. Propaganda is any systematic, widespread dissemination or promotion of particular ideas, doctrines, practices, etc. to further one's own cause or to damage an opposing one. Ideas, doctrines, or allegations spread in this manner, now often used despairingly to connote deception or distortion. Propaganda may take many forms, including public or recorded speeches, texts, films, and visual or artistic matter such as posters, paintings, sculptures, or public monuments. And this quote comes from the Museum of Modern Art. The earliest known propaganda can be found from Roman, Persian, and Greek empires. Propaganda from this time was depicted through sculptures, vases, paintings, and more. Our first example is the marble statue of Augustus from the Roman Empire, created in 15 BC. We can see with his height and the man next to his knee that he is strong and powerful and is leading the armies to great victories. The second example is the Greek vase depicting the strength of Greek soldiers against other armies and protecting their families and keeping Greece in their name. With the help of woodblock printing and the printing press, it became easier to spread propaganda during the American Revolution, World War II, and on. So first, I'd like to talk about propaganda in China. It began early during the Mao era and still exists today. This art drew from Soviet, Nazi, and other totalitarian art methods. This method represented a theory known as Leninism. Leninism is a political theory developed by Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin that proposes the establishment of a dictatorship as the political prelude to establishment of communism. Through this theory, they were able to indoctrinate and mass mobilize the population. Propaganda became most effective during the 20th and 21st century because of the printing press, mass media, and other authoritarian governments. In China today, their propaganda is depicted through cultivation of the economy and Chinese nationalism. Other modern-day propaganda focuses on re-establishing control after the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989. They also have memorabilia of propaganda during the Mao era. This propaganda art has appeared in new formats such as DVDs, karaoke, rock and pop versions of praise songs. They have also created t-shirts, watches, and more. These works have sold in recent years for nostalgia, social, and other purposes. There are many notable artists during this era because many worked together on projects. I chose to talk about these artists because they helped create a poster on the first slide shown. Ding Hao from Wuzheng, Jiangsu, was born in 1917 and lived until 2011. He designed commercial art. In the 1950s, he taught at Shanghai Art and Training School. This first poster with the torn red flag was created by Ding in 1959. This piece was created for the labor industry and labor ethics. The text is translated into, "The competition wave is high, and millions of workers are called heroes." The second artist that worked on this poster, the one that's in the left corner of the man waving, was Zhao Yanyan. Zhao from Huzhou, Zhejiang, was born in 1924. He studied both Western and Chinese art and graduated from the Guangdong Provincial Wartime Art Academy and joined the All China Association of Anti-Enemy Woodcut Artists. His innovative use of cutting and printing techniques influenced several generations of printmakers in China. Zhao is also best known for his numerous cartoons, New Year's pictures, and propaganda designs. The piece I chose from his collection was created in 1954 for the Campaign of Taiwan. It depicted the power of the Chinese army and their capability to take out their bird-head enemies. The text translates to Jie Feng releases Taiwan to eliminate the remnants of the Zhang bandits. The last artist was Cai Qinghua. He was born in 1912 in Daqin, Zhejiang, and lived until 2006. He was primarily interested in American illustration and caricatures. He worked as an illustrator for many publishers and a commercial press. After 1945, he began working as an independent designer. He retired in 1987 and specialized in cartoon strips and propaganda paintings. The piece I chose that he created was made in 1953. This piece was created for the Foreign Relations and Industry projects. This text translates to, with the great support of the Soviet Union and our own greatest strength, we will realize the industrialization of our nation step by step. The next place that I wanted to talk about was propaganda in Russia. Propaganda in Russia helped China create the system they use today. Russian ideology was based in Marxism. This theory is associated with capitalism and communism. Propaganda was one of the many ways the Soviet Union tried to control the citizens. During Stalin's reign, propaganda was even focused on social and natural science. Real knowledge such as genetics, cybernetics, and sociology were condemned as bourgeoisie pseudoscience, or middle-class false science. Imagery frequently drew on heroic realism. This reflected a call for heroic and romantic art, which reflected the ideal rather than the realistic. The main Soviet Union censorship body was employed not only to eliminate any undesirable printed materials, but also to ensure that the correct ideological spin was put on every published item. In the Stalin era, deviation from the dictates of the official propaganda was punished by execution and labor camps. In the post-Stalin era, these punitive measures were replaced by punitive psychiatry, prison, denial of work, and loss of citizenship. Russian artists that I chose to talk about today. First was Dmitry Moore. He was a famous artist for the Soviet Union. This illustrator had no formal training, but was able to work for a magazine company from 1908 to 1917. In October 1917, he began to produce famous satirical pieces of art that reflected different things happening in Russia. Moore's style consisted of crisp, simple lines in black and white, sometimes with color. His art communicated messages immediately and clearly. Another famous artist in the USSR was Bazda Irakli. He was born in 1902 and lived until 1985. After graduating from Tbilisi State Academy of Arts, he began to paint and design posters for the USSR. He joined the Artists' Union of the USSR and eventually won many prizes, including the Stalin Prize, an award for engineering and arts presented during 1941 to 1954. I wanted to cover propaganda in the Pacific because that's where we all attended school, and I thought it would be important to cover. A lot of propaganda about the Pacific Islands or Oceania is written by outside European or American anthropologists. Written propaganda will also sometimes have photographs to accompany their stories. Propaganda about Oceania talked about the people being savages and primitive comparatively to Western civilization. Europeans also depicted the islands as a desirable tropical paradise. This brought in settlers to Oceania. This made it more westernized. The man well known for colonial propaganda in Oceania is John Williams, also known as the Apostle of Polynesia. The Christian Church also brought religious propaganda to the people to convert the masses to Christianity during wars. Japanese, Australian, and New Zealand propaganda was brought mostly for the troops' entertainment. These works of French propaganda, which described Tahiti as a land of bounty and earthly delights, became available to inspire artists like Gauguin. They described a land only comparable to the Garden of Eden for romantic and literally minded Europeans. Because much of the propaganda surrounding Oceania has to do with the beauty of the islands, these arts acted as a colonial force. Gauguin eventually submitted to French colonialism and began to create art that gave ideas of this place that was not real. Gauguin's art primarily depicted naked women or the landscapes of Tahiti. He never shows violence or savages that were talked about by anthropologists. Gauguin was able to make his art exotic and mysterious through his vibrant color palette. Gauguin's art will be remembered forever through postcards and tourist information. Propaganda made by the people. As explained by my favorite artist, Shepard Fairey, people want to open up and talk about what's going on. He states at the beginning of his manifesto that the Obey campaign can be explained as an experiment in phenomenology. Heidegger explains phenomenology as the process of letting things manifest themselves. Phenomenology attempts to enable people to see clearly something that is right before their eyes but obscured. Things that are so taken for granted that they are muted by abstract observation. There are other artists out there that believe in exposing what's going on in the world around them. These artists often bring to light tyrannical governments. They also display their work in public places. They can be considered graffiti artists that are vandalizing the buildings around them. However, many of these artists today have permission to put their art up on these walls. The artists I decided to talk about were Shepard Fairey and Banksy. Shepard Fairey was born in 1970 and still lives today. He's an American street artist, graphic designer, activist, and illustrator who started out in the skateboarding scene and still works there today. He became known for his Andre the Giant Has a Posse campaign while attending Rhode Island School of Design. He's also known for his 2008 U.S. presidential election Hope poster for Barack Obama. His work included in the collections of the Smithsonian, the Museum of Modern Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and more. Shepard Fairey is known for his bold, iconic style that is based on stylizing and idealizing images. Banksy, born in 1974 and is still also present today, is an anonymous England-based street artist, vandal, political activist, and film director since the 1990s. His works of political and social commentary have been featured all over the world on the streets, walls, and bridges. His public installations are regularly resold, often even by removing the wall they were painted on. So the picture I chose for his was something he painted in, I believe, this year. It depicts a little memorial for an unknown person while the American flag is burning, probably representing what's going on in the US today. And this is my bibliography. If you'd like more information about where I found all of this, feel free to check it out. Thank you and have a great day.